Why does it feel like something is deeply wrong, even when everything seems fine? You wake up, you check your phone, you sip your coffee, you go to work, you scroll, you smile, you nod, you survive. And yet, there's a silence inside, a quiet ache, as if something vital has been stolen and you've forgotten how to ask for it back. This isn't a glitch in the system. This is the system. More than 150 years ago, a man watched smoke rise from factory chimneys in Europe and heard the sound of something else burning: human potential. Karl Marx didn't just write about economics. He wrote about alienation, about what it means to become a stranger to your own life, about how the world, shaped by capital, can turn people into shadows of themselves. And yet, we didn't listen. Or maybe we did. But we didn't want to believe him. Because to accept Marx's warning means facing a hard truth, that the very structure of our modern lives, our work, our consumption, our hopes and dreams, has been built atop an invisible system of exploitation. Look around. We live in glass towers and digital clouds, but the pain is still there. It just hides better now. It wears designer suits. It speaks in motivational quotes. It sells freedom in monthly subscriptions. But Marx saw through the costume. He saw that when labor becomes just a means to survive, not to live, the soul begins to fracture. The worker becomes poorer the more wealth he produces. How is it that in the age of abundance, people feel more anxious than ever? More exhausted, more disconnected, more replaceable. We are surrounded by machines built to make life easier. But life keeps getting harder. Maybe the smoke didn't disappear. Maybe we just got used to breathing it. The warning wasn't just about factories or capital accumulation. It was about us, about what happens when human life is reduced to input and output, when relationships become transactions, when dreams are traded for deadlines. This isn't nostalgia for a past that never existed. It's a mourning for the present we were promised and never received. In the flicker of a screen, in the drone of the daily commute, in the silence between paychecks, there's a whisper. Faint, but persistent. A question: is this all there is? That question, once heard, doesn't go away. It haunts boardrooms and bedrooms. It echoes in therapists' offices, in journal entries, in late-night walks alone. It's the whisper in the smoke, and it's time to finally answer it. What if the greatest theft in human history wasn't of gold or land, but of time? Not in the dramatic way we imagine. No clocks smashed, no hours ripped from calendars. Just the slow, daily erosion of your life, traded minute by minute, hour by hour for a paycheck. You wake up not when your body is ready, but when the alarm screams. You rush through breakfast, sit in traffic, stare at screens, attend meetings that feel like nothing, do tasks that feel like everything, and return home too tired to live the life you're supposedly working for. This is not by accident. It is by design. Marx called it surplus value, the profit that the capitalist extracts from your labor by paying you less than the value you actually produce. But beneath the numbers, the cold math, lies a deeper horror. You are not just selling your labor, you are selling your time, and time is life. Think of a machine that eats hours like fuel. It doesn't matter what you do, whether you smile, cry, create, or collapse, it just wants more of your time. It converts your living moments into outputs, into metrics, into profit. You become a number on a spreadsheet, an availability on a calendar, a resource, not a human. And then you wonder why you feel empty, why your passions feel distant, why your weekends feel too short, why you can't remember the last time you felt alive. Time is everything. Man is nothing. He is at the most time's carcass. Karl Marx. In capitalism, time is not sacred. It's monetized, measured, and mined like a raw material. They say time is money, but that's not true. Time is more than money. It's identity, presence, possibility. And once it's gone, it doesn't return. But in the logic of the system, the more time you give away, the more productive you are. The more exhausted you are, the more virtuous. Hustle becomes a badge of honor, burnout becomes a lifestyle. And rest becomes guilt. You are told you're free, but can freedom exist without control over your own time? No, because time is the foundation of freedom. If you can't decide how to spend your time, you don't own your life. Someone else does. So ask yourself, who owns your time? That question burns, doesn't it? Because deep down, we know the answer. It's not us. Not yet. But awareness is the first act of resistance. To reclaim your time is to begin reclaiming yourself. To pause, even briefly, is a radical act in a world built on speed. So the next time you feel that ticking, the silent pressure to perform, to produce, to obey the rhythm of the machine, stop, listen, feel, and remember, you are not a battery. You are a human being. Your time is sacred, and it's time to take it back. They told us we were free. Free to choose, free to speak, free to move, free to dream. But how free can you really be inside a cage, just because it's made of glass? You can see the world. You can see others walking beside you, but you can't touch anything real. You press your hand to the wall and feel nothing but the cold surface of illusion. This is the illusion of freedom in late-stage capitalism. We are given choices, brands, platforms, job titles, screen sizes, but not power. We are told to express ourselves, but only within curated limits. We are permitted to be ourselves, as long as that self is profitable, palatable, and productive. The glass cage is beautiful. It has sleek design, fast internet, ergonomic chairs, and mental health webinars. It tells you, you can do anything, while whispering, but not too much, and not too loudly. It's a paradox, comfort without connection, mobility without direction. The ideas of the ruling class are in every epoch the ruling ideas. Karl Marx. In this system, freedom is marketed like a product. Your individuality is sold back to you in pieces, through likes, algorithms, aesthetics. And the more you buy, the more trapped you become. You can feel it, can't you? That invisible hand tightening its grip, not through violence, but through expectation. You're not forced to obey. You're trained to want it. You don't see bars, because the cage is made of dreams. Dreams of success, influence, achievement, escape. But each dream comes with a price tag, and most of us spend our lives trying to afford what was promised to us for free. The result? An epidemic of quiet desperation. People smiling in selfies, crying in silence. People achieving milestones, yet feeling nothing. People surrounded by technology and starving for meaning. This is not freedom. This is a new kind of prison. One that looks like a playground but feels like a trap. You can decorate your cell, you can change your wallpaper. You can even work remotely, but at the end of the day, you're still inside. And the scariest part? Most of us don't want to leave, because outside the cage is the unknown. Outside is risk, confrontation, truth. And after years of conditioning, the cage feels safer. But real freedom is not comfort. It's clarity. It's choosing your own values, not just echoing the systems. It's questioning everything, even your own desires. It's stepping outside the algorithm and asking, who am I without this system? That question shakes the walls. It doesn't come with answers. It comes with silence. But in that silence, there's possibility. There's the first crack in the glass. So the next time someone tells you you're free, ask yourself, free to do what? Free from what? Free for whom? Only then will you see the cage. And once you see it, you can begin to break it. Not all chains rattle. Some are silent, digital, polite. They arrive in envelopes, apps, interest rates. This is not slavery by force. This is slavery by agreement, by consent, by contract, debt. We're taught to see it as normal, even responsible. A student loan, a mortgage, a credit card. But debt is not just a financial burden. It's a tool of control, a way to own your future before you even arrive in it. You sign a paper, click a box, accept the terms, and a part of you becomes property. Not to one master, but to a system. A system that smiles, offers you opportunity, then bleeds you dry 1 month at a time. The credit system becomes the main lever of overproduction and overspeculation in commerce. Karl Marx debt is sold as empowerment, the key to education, home ownership, dreams. But beneath the surface, it is a leash. A quiet demand that you keep moving, keep producing, keep obeying. Because as long as you owe, you cannot stop, you cannot rest, you cannot resist. You must work no matter how broken you feel. You must comply no matter what it costs you. And that is the point. Debt ensures participation in a game rigged against you. It keeps you in the job you hate, in the city you can't afford, in the cycle you can't escape. And yet, they call it freedom. They say you chose this. But what kind of choice is it when the alternative is homelessness? When education without debt means ignorance? When healthcare without insurance means death? Debt is not a mistake, it's the business model. You are encouraged to chase a lifestyle you can't afford, then punished for failing to maintain it. And while you're busy paying interest, the system is collecting something far more valuable than money: your obedience, your anxiety, your time. Because the debtor doesn't only pay in dollars, they pay in silence, in submission, in deferred dreams. And this is what Marx understood long before credit scores existed. He saw how capital creates dependency, not through kindness, but through need. How it makes you need it just to survive. So ask yourself, if you had no debt, what would you do differently? Would you leave that job? Would you speak louder? Would you breathe deeper? Debt isn't just about numbers. It's about control. It's about who gets to decide what your life looks like. And until you see that, you'll keep thinking you're behind on your payments, when really the system is stealing your life. There's a place where emotions are manufactured, where happiness is mandatory, where every frown is a liability and every smile is an expectation. Welcome to the modern workplace. Welcome to the Smile Factory. Here, you're not just paid to perform tasks, you're paid to feel the right way, or at least pretend you do. Customer service, tech support, social media, marketing, even your Instagram feed. Everywhere, we are asked not just to do, but to be pleasant, be upbeat, be inspiring. In the age of capitalism, even your emotions are commodified. The worker no longer feels himself to be freely active in any but his animal functions. What is animal becomes human, and what is human becomes animal. Karl Marx. What Marx saw in the factories of his time, the alienation of the worker from the product, the process, and himself, has evolved. Today, you don't just alienate your labor, you alienate your authenticity. You show up tired, but you say, "I'm great." You're grieving, but your email signs off with a smile. You're anxious, but your voice on the call is calm, warm, professional. And the scariest part, you start to forget the difference. The Smile Factory runs 24/7. Its currency is likes, retweets, good vibes only, team-building exercises, and performance reviews. It rewards conformity and penalizes vulnerability. Here, sadness is unprofessional, anger is dangerous, doubt is weakness. So you hide, you swallow, you fake it, and eventually, you lose touch with what you really feel. This is emotional labor, the unpaid work of managing your feelings for the benefit of others. And in today's economy, it's expected, demanded, monetized. You're no longer just a worker, you're a brand, a personality, a product. And what happens when your real self doesn't match the product? You either change or you break. This is not sustainable. You are not a smiling machine. You are a human being with depth, contradiction, and pain. But the Smile Factory doesn't want your depth. It wants your surface. It wants you to suppress what's inconvenient, to mask what's uncomfortable, to be agreeable no matter the cost. And the cost is enormous. It's the quiet burnout, the Sunday dread, the feeling of coming home and not recognizing yourself in the mirror. Because when your emotions become tools of profit, your soul becomes expendable. So the next time you're told to just smile, ask yourself, who benefits from that smile? And what part of you is being silenced? Because maybe the most radical thing you can do in a world that demands your happiness is to feel what you really feel. And maybe the most revolutionary act is to stop pretending. Everything has a price now, not just things. You, your attention, your data, your creativity, your sadness, your soul. You once existed simply to live. Now you exist to produce, to sell yourself in pieces, to become valuable in the eyes of a system that never asked who you are, only what you're worth. This is the essence of commodity fetishism, a concept Marx warned us about, but one we now live inside like a second skin. A commodity appears at first sight a very trivial thing, but it is in reality a very strange thing, abounding in metaphysical subtleties. Karl Marx. What he meant was simple. Objects in capitalism take on a life of their own. We don't see the human labor behind them. We don't see the pain, the struggle, the sacrifice. We just see value. A sneaker isn't just a sneaker, it's identity. A car isn't just transportation, it's status. A phone isn't just a tool, it's self-expression. But what happens when you become the commodity? When your identity is curated, filtered, monetized, when your image is worth more than your inner life? It's not just influencers, it's all of us. Every resume, every profile, every brand is a performance, a packaging of the self for public consumption, a quiet, daily auction of your essence. And the worst part, you start to believe it. You start to think you really are your job title, your productivity, your net worth, your engagement rate. You start to think that if you're not producing something, you're not someone. This is the theft no one talks about, not of money, not of land, but of meaning. The human soul, once infinite and irreducible, is now measured in likes, salaries, and promotions. You sell your time, you sell your energy, and slowly, without realizing it, you sell yourself. But here's the truth they never tell you. You are not a product. You are not a brand. You are not your output. You are a living being, with value that cannot be calculated, with worth that cannot be sold. And if the world tells you otherwise, then the world is wrong. So ask yourself, what part of you have you sold in exchange for survival, and what would it look like to buy it back? Not with money, but with honesty, with boundaries, with rebellion, because maybe your soul was never for sale. Maybe it was only loaned to a system that never deserved it. And maybe, just maybe, it's time to take it back. Imagine standing in a room full of mirrors. Everywhere you look, you see reflections, images of success, happiness, beauty, freedom. But try to touch any of them, and your hand meets nothing but air. This is ideology, not as a theory in a book, but as a fog that fills the modern world. It tells you what to want, what to chase, who to be. And the cruelest part? It makes you think those desires are your own. The ruling ideas of each age have ever been the ideas of its ruling class. Karl Marx. In capitalism, control doesn't come from violence anymore. It comes from belief, from the stories we are told, and the ones we repeat. If you work hard, you'll succeed. If you're struggling, it's your fault. Anyone can make it. These aren't just harmless sayings. They're ideological weapons. They turn exploitation into opportunity. They turn poverty into personal failure. They turn solidarity into competition. And just like that, the system hides in plain sight. It doesn't need to force you to obey. It convinces you to want what it wants. It tells you that working 60 hours a week is ambition, that burnout is a badge of honor, that buying more will fill the emptiness inside you. But it never does, because the emptiness was never about having too little. It was about being too far from yourself. And still, the mirrors surround you, endless reflections of who you're supposed to be. The entrepreneur, the hustler, the self-made winner. But where's the reflection of the tired mother working 2 jobs? Where's the reflection of the immigrant crushed under loans? Where's the reflection of the artist who gave up? These lives don't fit the narrative, so they're erased. The mirrors show you only what the system wants you to see. They create a world of smoke, beautiful, deceptive, suffocating. And just like that, the false consciousness takes hold. You defend the system that exploits you. You blame yourself for your exhaustion. You cheer for billionaires who would never step over a puddle for you. But the moment you see the smoke, the moment you realize the mirror is a trick, something breaks, something sacred. And in that breaking is the beginning of truth. Because when ideology loses its grip, you stop chasing illusions. You start asking real questions. Who benefits from my exhaustion? Whose dream am I living? What if success isn't what I was told? And in those questions, a new kind of clarity begins. Not the clarity of easy answers, but the clarity of finally seeing the system for what it is. A house of mirrors, built on smoke, held up by your belief. And belief can be withdrawn. They told us we were moving forward, that every step we took, every new technology, every faster machine, every taller skyscraper, was proof that we were evolving. Progress, growth, development. But if this is progress, why does it feel like everything is falling apart? The climate is collapsing. Mental health is crumbling. Trust in institutions is disintegrating. People are lonelier than ever, scrolling through curated lives, screaming into digital voids. We were promised a better future, but all we got were broken toys. Accumulation of wealth at one pole is, therefore, at the same time, accumulation of misery at the opposite pole. Karl Marx. While billionaires launch themselves into space, families sleep in cars. While corporations post about mental health awareness, their workers break under impossible pressure. While your phone connects you to the world, it disconnects you from yourself. We were never meant to live this way. But capitalism doesn't measure well-being. It measures profit. It doesn't ask, "Are you okay?" It asks, "Are you productive?" This is the tragedy of modern life. The system works, even when it destroys everything, because it wasn't designed for people. It was designed for capital, for endless growth, for infinite consumption in a finite world. And now, we're choking on that growth. The oceans are rising, forests are burning, cities are flooding, and still, the machine says, more, faster, cheaper. We were handed tools of liberation, the internet, medicine, automation, and watched them become instruments of surveillance, dependence, and burnout. Every advance was supposed to bring us closer to freedom. Instead, it brought us to the edge of collapse. This is what Marx meant when he spoke of contradictions. When a system becomes so efficient at destroying what it depends on, it plants the seeds of its own end. And here we are, trying to build meaningful lives on a crumbling foundation, chasing happiness through consumption, measuring our worth by our output. It's not working, but we're too afraid to stop, because stopping feels like failure, like falling behind, like admitting we've been lied to. So we keep going. We buy the next gadget, we chase the next promotion, we medicate the anxiety, numb the exhaustion, and call it normal. But deep down, we know this is not progress. This is a machine chewing through the planet and our souls, leaving behind nothing but broken toys and forgotten dreams. And maybe it's time to ask, what if the system isn't broken? What if it was built this way? What if real progress isn't faster technology or higher profits, but deeper connection, slower living, collective healing? What if we don't need to move forward but to turn around and remember what it means to be human? Because sometimes, the only way out of a nightmare is to wake up. He saw it all coming, not in the details, not the smartphones, the gig economy, or the burnout memes, but in the bones of the system, in the logic of capital, in the cold math of exploitation. Karl Marx didn't predict the future, he revealed its architecture. Capital is dead labor, which vampire-like lives only by sucking living labor, and lives the more labor it sucks. It wasn't a metaphor, it was a diagnosis. He warned us that capital would prioritize profit over people. That labor would be alienated from its own humanity. That crises would repeat, deepen, intensify. And still, we would be told to blame ourselves. And yet, we didn't listen. We turned his name into a slur, his work into a myth. We buried him under propaganda, under decades of red fear and capitalist triumphalism. We declared his ideas obsolete, even as we live them every single day. Look around now. See the gig workers with no protections. The young adults drowning in debt before their lives begin. The planet pushed past its limits. The growing wealth of the few, built on the exhaustion of the many. This isn't some glitch in the system. This is the system. And Marx didn't just explain how it works. He warned what would happen if we didn't change it. Alienation wasn't a poetic idea. It was a lived reality of being severed from your labor, from your community, from yourself. He saw how the working class, if divided and distracted, would never rise. How ideology would become more sophisticated, more seductive. How freedom would be sold in the language of choice, even as choices narrowed. He didn't claim to have all the answers, but he gave us the tools to see clearly, to unmask the system, to call things by their real names. And still, we looked away. Because the truth is terrifying. It means we're not just overworked, we're exploited. Not just anxious, we're alienated. Not just tired, we're trapped in a machine designed to consume us. But here's the thing. A warning isn't a curse. It's a gift. It doesn't have to end this way. We don't have to keep marching toward collapse. We can stop, we can listen. Not just to Marx, but to our own pain, to our own knowing, to the whisper we've ignored for too long. Because once you hear it, once you let the truth in, you can never go back to sleep. And maybe that's what they're really afraid of. Not of Marx, but of us. Awake, together, refusing to play along. There's a silence after collapse. Not the kind that comforts, the kind that stares back at you. Empty shelves, burned out eyes, numb mornings. The aftermath of a system that promised everything and then delivered exhaustion. But in that silence, something flickers. A thought, a memory, a refusal, a spark. This isn't where the story ends. This is where it begins again. Because once you see the machine for what it is, not broken but working exactly as intended, you stop blaming yourself and you start asking new questions. What if the problem isn't in you, but around you? What if your exhaustion isn't personal, but political? What if your worth has nothing to do with your productivity? You were never meant to be a gear, or a brand, or a subscription service. You were meant to be whole. And no matter how long you've lived inside this system, it has not erased your humanity. You still feel, you still dream, you still ache for something real. That ache is a sign. That dream is a map. That anger is fuel. Philosophers have only interpreted the world in various ways. The point, however, is to change it. Karl Marx. The world doesn't change with slogans. It changes with courage, with clarity, with collective refusal. With people like you, who stop pretending, who start questioning, who dare to imagine a different way. You don't have to overthrow a government. You don't have to have all the answers. You only have to begin where you are, with what you have, with who you are. Because every small act of honesty is a crack in the lie. Every conversation, every shared story, every moment of rest is rebellion against a system that only values your exhaustion. You are not alone. There are millions like you, waking up, shaking off the fog, looking around and whispering the words we were never meant to say. This isn't freedom. This isn't working. We deserve more. And from those whispers comes a voice. From that voice comes a movement. From that movement comes a future. A future not built on ashes, but on awareness. Not on silence, but on solidarity. And it begins right now. So now I ask you, have you ever felt like something was deeply wrong, even when everyone else told you it was fine? Have you ever looked around and wondered if this routine, this hustle, this silent suffering was all life had to offer? What if you're not broken, but awakening? What if the cracks in your comfort aren't a sign of failure, but of consciousness breaking through? Marx warned us 150 years ago, not to scare us, but to wake us. Now it's our turn. To wake each other. To speak honestly. To live deliberately. If something in this video stirred something in you, don't silence it. Comment below. Tell me what you feel, what you see, what you refuse to accept. And if this message resonates, subscribe. Because this is not the end of the conversation. It's just the beginning. Next episode, we will dive into the myth of meritocracy and the brutal lie that success is simply a matter of effort. Until then, stay awake, stay human, stay free.